a long day at ILC with a lot of ideas. And on our panel, it struck me that like me, you herd cats for a living, right? So what are your thoughts just on how do you do that? How do you keep creatives energized?
It's kind of what I probably spend most of my time doing, and it's the most important thing to do. And I view myself, as much as there's a leadership aspect of what I do, there's a protection of the creative people. This business is full of necessities. There's a necessity for capital. There's a necessity for contractors and developers and investors and all operators and all the things that make a hotel actually come to fruition. But what makes our hotel special and your hotel special is the creative things that happen. So what I view my biggest role is of finding that talent, whether it be internal talent or external talent, and then protecting them to allow them to actually be able to create while I manage all of the necessary evils to ultimately create the product for the guests.
Yeah, I think we have a similar approach where, as you know, is we kind of keep hotel management separate from Atelier ACE, which is really much more our creative lab. And it's interesting sometimes, is you even brokering with the properties on actually there's reason they're doing something and it takes a little longer than you would because you would just get the ugly thing that's in the catalog and they have to create it. And I think that constant concept of how do you inspire creatives to keep that energy going when sometimes they get shot at a lot with the technical side.
And I actually love what you guys have done in splitting the Atelier from the operations because it has an integrity to it. It allows people to have that cocoon to create and develop and then bring it to the world. And I think I said on the panel, one of the things that keeps us fresh is making our own lives hard.
Yeah, that's true.
Really we're forcing ourselves to hire people that are difficult to manage, difficult to work with,
100%.
have ideas that don't fit in a box. And that's not a normal tendency. Building a company, you want it to be a tight running ship, but then we're hiring all these crazy people to be put on our ship. And then we still expect the ship to sail in a direction. But I think that's what differentiates what you and I do, what Standard and ACE does from the big companies who are about efficiency versus creativity.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And you mentioned kind of the challenge too, investors who are sort of out there to mitigate risk and play a little safe and all of that kind of stuff. And we're always trying to create and do things differently and take a little longer and figure it out. We get a lot of pushback, that you shouldn't be doing that. We can just do this. And
well, I think from the beginning of one of the things beginnings of a deal process or a development process, to me, as soon as we start talking to investors and they say, well, we'd like to develop a hotel and we're thinking about doing a Marriott or a Hilton or maybe a W or maybe a Standard. If we're having that conversation, it's not the right person.
Yeah, exactly.
What we want, as much as we
what
want
I like is when they say we're doing an RFP,
yeah.
and it's you, W.
Yeah. And then we say, no, thank you. It doesn't work. So as much as we look for special guests, I say something about our guests, it's not for everybody, but everybody's welcome. It's really not for everybody, but we really do welcome it. So even for the developers and owners and investors, we're not for every investor.
Yeah.
We're not. But we're for the investors who want to make something really, really special that they know is actually harder to get to for a better end result.
So you're not those changing what you do according to a Yelp review?
No. No cards that say review us on Yelp.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's go to TripAdvisor. Well, that's actually interesting because I think one of the things ILC has been talking a lot about is making deals in this kind of original creative world, right? So, I mean, you guys did London, and it's funny,
yeah.
you're building, we walked it ages and ages ago, Alex, myself, and Kelly, who you know, and we walked it and we're like, this building is awesome. And we're like, it should be a Standard. And I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing to me because it's your brand, I think ours, is so well understood that just walking a building and seeing that route, I could see you guys there.
No, I'm glad you said that. One of the things about London, that particular project I think embodies a lot of what Standard is about. There are many other brands, you were already in London so it wasn't your brand, but other brands looked at that building and actually said, this is ugly, it needs to be torn down.
We loved it.
You loved it, and you also said it looks like a Standard. We were the only group that looked at it and said it does not need to be torn down. Not only that, we think it's fantastic. And the funny thing about this building is that it's this 1974 brutalist architecture building, which a lot of people think is ugly, we think is cool, but regardless of what you think, the building across the street is a St. Pancras Station, Victoria, which is absolutely beautiful by all accounts. But the funny thing about a hotel is we think about the experience. We get to look at them. So unambiguously, whatever you think about our building, you might like it or not, maybe, but we get to look at a beautiful building and we're inside.
Well, the other thing is I know from experience, no hotel architect's building a better building than what you have, right? So don't tear it down.
No, and so we kept the windows, which are so beautiful, and what we were able to do, and putting something like this together is really hard. In order to make the realities of the economics work, we had to think differently about that building and differently about development. The Standard Highline, which is our flagship property here in New York, is beautifully designed as a hotel from scratch. So it's thin, it's narrow, the views are great, the windows, it's a very efficient building, very efficient. We have, for the hotel nerds out, we have 338 rooms, 6 F&B venues, and 200,000 square feet, which is crazy efficient. But you have to deal with the cards you're dealt. In London, it's a short, squat office building. What do you do with that? So we did a couple things. One is we didn't put an atrium, but we did interior rooms. In London, unlike in the US and like in New York, you can do rooms that have no windows, which actually immediately sounds terrible. But
you get a good night's sleep.
You get a great noise. You get a great night's sleep, and if you think about it,
and good for jet lag.
If you think about it, you're right onto it. If you think about it, you're right across from the St. Pancras station, which goes to Paris. If you miss your train that night, what do you want to do? You want to have a great dinner and have something to drink and get a great night's sleep. And if you're paying half the price to stay in the Standard for a great night's sleep, that's actually better than paying full price for a big room. So,
but that's what we're talking about, right? Creative solutions. Like, I think the donut answer is what everybody does, and then you're left with this weird corridor that's like.
And it's about expectation. Call it what it is. Go, and we have musicians that stay in our hotel that work during the night and sleep during the day, and they also don't have a lot of money, but they still want to stay at a Standard. So I think one of the things we both do well, the rigidity of the big brands. A room has to be 400 square feet or 500 square feet. You have to have once you get locked in that mindset, you miss the cocktail party that you put together of different types of people, and you miss out on creative ways to utilize space, which is ultimately what a hotel is.
I think it's funny because I think our toughest deal was trying to finance it when we were going into downtown LA. And you guys were already there. No one else was there. And we wanted to get into downtown LA, and we got this building, amazing building, right? 1,600 seat theater, beautiful architecture, and we would take investors there, and they're like, I'm not bringing my money down here. There are homeless people in the street, right? And we tried and tried and tried, and we finally said, like, how did Standard do it? And we were like, Greenfield funded that hotel for you guys. And so we said, let's call Greenfield. And you know what? In the end, we made that deal really because Greenfield was like, yeah, we did it at Standard, it worked. We've seen it. You know, the money sometimes is so risk adverse that the only person that could get to the point where they could make that deal with us was somebody who saw the power of creativity already work in that location.
I think that's right, and I think we have a history of doing that, and King's Cross in London is a good example. We've been working, and you know the really good ones take a long time. We've been working on that project for 5 years, and it's just now going to open. But in order to get the investors, we had to do some other interesting things. How do you make most use of the building? We had a relationship with Google, who's our biggest customer globally. Their headquarters are 2 blocks away. We were able to get the chairman of Google to write a letter on our behalf to the government to say that we could add 2 floors to the building in order to justify the returns to the investors. So we wanted it, but in order to actually make it work, we had to do a major jigsaw puzzle to get them to believe.
We play the same games. Google helped us get into our hotel in Chicago, so.
We put Google's name on anything and say they're backing and the people want to give you money. So yeah.
Chicago was our first new build, and
we're doing a new build in Chicago now too. So it's cool to learn from what you guys have done and vice versa. And with Bunkhouse, we're going to New Orleans, which we'll learn a lot from you. And I think you and I share the same view that it's about collaboration in this business. There's plenty of room for everybody. And Ace and Standard, I think, have a shared ethos in how to do things, but the voices are very different, right, which is great. So you can do things culturally in a similar fashion, but have a different voice and a customer base that appreciates the different aspects of it.
And we're doing, in New Orleans, we're doing a luxury guest house, which is kind of playing into a little of what you guys have been doing with Bunkhouse. So maybe we'll step on your feet a little there.
Hope so.
Thanks.